And then I'm gonna. So 3, 2, 1. Aloha! This is Jason from Hawaii. Welcome to a special edition of the Comics for Fun and Profit podcast. Today, we are going to get lost in comics. In this episode, I'll be interviewing Chris Garcia from the Lost in Comics YouTube podcast. He's here to promote his YouTube podcast, the YouTube podcast channel, other social media platforms, and we're just going to have fun talking about comics and pop culture stuff. So, Chris, how are you doing today?
Well, first off, aloha, Jason. It's a pleasure to finally meet you. Man, you are such a positive force of energy on social media. I get a lot of joy from your posts and just your positivity on social media. So I'm excited to do this. My pleasure, absolutely my pleasure on this.
No, but Chris, I also have to say thank you very much because when I went on because when I joined Twitter in January 2020, I know a few months after that, you followed me and you also, and it was pretty cool. You DM me and say, hey, we've got this YouTube channel, Lost in Comics. If you get a chance, please follow. So thank you very much for following me, on Twitter. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. And it's funny because you would think I sent a lot of those messages, but
Yes.
I remember almost all of them, and I've actually revisited. I think I've revisited our original DM at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's just something I'm very meticulous in all the things I do, and so I don't know. I just at some point I looked at that message again, and I think that's awesome. Like some of the people that I have talked to over the last couple of years that I've actually built some sort of friendship relationship with. It all started with those DMs, and I'm really glad that I did that because I mean, what a great community.
It is. Yes, it
Yeah.
is. All right. So I'm going to ask, we already talked about Twitter. So where can listeners follow you on social media?
So I think primarily I am a big Twitter user,
Mhm.
and on Twitter we're lost_comics. I remember when we opened up that account, for whatever reason, Lost in Comics was not available. So
Uh-huh.
Twitter is the only one that is a little different. It's Lost_comics. On Instagram, you can just find us at Lost in Comics.
Mhm.
And for anybody that doesn't know us, there is no I in Lost in Comics. It's just Lost in Comics, LOSTN, like
Mhm.
apostrophe in comics, Lost in Comics. We're from Texas, so we tend to run, make our words run together sometimes. So you get lost in comics, like sort of thing. So that,
Mhm.
but that's what we are. Instagram and Twitter primarily. Of course, YouTube. You can just look up Lost in Comics.
Mhm. All right. So Chris, I'm going to ask you, where did you grow up?
So, like I mentioned just a second ago, Texas,
Mhm.
born and raised, born in San Antonio.
Oh, okay.
So, home of the Spurs, San Antonio Spurs, Tim
Mhm.
Duncan, Manu, Tony Parker. Shout out to the Spurs. But I definitely grew up more in some smaller towns just south of San Antonio. Born in San
Mhm.
Antonio, but raised in small town South Texas. And my wife and I actually moved to San Antonio for a few years after we got married,
Mhm.
and then ended up just too much traffic, too many people, and somehow we found our way back to a little smaller town now. And luckily, I thankfully work from home, and my wife works from home,
Oh,
so
that's nice.
it's a beautiful beautiful life. Got my two kids and 6-year-old boy and my 2-year-old little girl. She was
Mhm.
born right at the peak of the pandemic in March of 2020. So
Okay.
yeah,
Oh, congratulations. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah,
that's
thank you.
nice. So, all right, now, like, do you remember what was your first comics that you read? It could be Sunday comics, it even could be Mad Magazine, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, I'll never forget it, Jason. I went into a comic store one day. My curiosity was really peaked at the time. I had been watching the MCU movies. I'd
Mhm.
always been a huge Batman fan ever since I was a kid. I
Mhm.
I watched all the Batman movies. Even in college, I did a paper on why Batman was the best fictional character, ever created. And this was before I was reading comics.
Yeah.
And it's
Mhm.
funny, about 2.5 years ago, I found that paper when I was cleaning out my garage.
Mhm.
But that's how much I enjoyed those characters, and that curiosity eventually led me into my local comic store. And I went into the comic store having no idea what I was getting into, what I was looking for.
Mhm.
Honestly, I was a little overwhelmed when I walked into the store and I just saw, issues all over the wall and short and
Mhm.
long boxes all over the place.
Mhm.
And I immediately in my head thought, how am I gonna read all the I saw Batman just line rows of
Yes.
books, and I was like,
Mhm.
there's no way I can. And in my head I thought, wow, if I want to know Batman, I got to read all these books. Obviously that's not the case, where you can jump in different arcs and things like that. But
Mhm.
my first experience, I asked the gentleman that was working there at the comic store, and this is why I'm such a big advocate about the local comic store, man. They hold so much responsibility for new readers.
Mhm.
People that don't know what they're doing when they go into a comic store,
Yes.
they're
Mhm.
asking for advice. I asked this gentleman for advice, and he kind of just shrugged me off a little bit. And I,
Mhm.
I I said, how do you get into comics? And he said, well, what characters do you like? And I said, well, I like the turtles, and I love Batman.
Yeah.
um and so he went over to the new comic wall. He picked
Mhm.
off a random issue of a turtle series that was going on at the time. And to be completely honest, I do not remember the name of that series,
Mhm.
because
Mhm.
it was the turtles were in space. I
Mhm.
don't even it was, like I said, it was in the middle of an arc. It was like an
Mhm.
issue 6 or 5, something like that.
Mhm.
However, he showed me that. He walked back to the counter, and I was like, wow, okay. So it didn't help me out all that much. But I happened to look down at the bottom shelf.
Mhm.
On the bottom shelf, they had DC reprints, those dollar reprinted
Oh yes.
issues. And there was a Dark Knight Returns issue number 1, Frank Miller, for $1,
Oh,
the
nice.
reprint.
Mhm.
So I thought, well, that's $1. I had no idea what it was.
Yeah.
Picked it up, and those were the 2 books that I purchased. And I came home. I'll never forget. I was barbecuing here outside, and I came inside, and I thought, I'll check out these comic books. And I read the turtle book first.
Mhm.
Completely lost. I had it was just
Yeah.
like I said, it was in the middle of an arc. I didn't know what was going on,
Yeah.
and I thought, oh man, like I was a little disappointed. But then I picked up the Batman, the Dark
Mhm.
Knight Returns issue number 1, and I read that. And when I closed the book, I was just like, like
Yes.
my mind was just blown. I was like, wow, like that was for me, like I wanted more. Like
Mhm.
I wanted more. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, is there more to this?
Mhm.
I didn't
Yeah.
even I didn't understand what issues were. There was a number 2, a number 3.
Yeah.
I just knew, man, I have to read if there's more of this. So I went to
Mhm.
another comic store, and they,
Yes.
of course, directed me to the rest of the arc. I got the trade, and
Okay.
my life
Mhm.
was changed forever, Jason. Honestly, from that moment.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was that. But that is the book that I hold as my first, comic love. What got me
Yes.
into this great hobby that we all love.
Oh yes. Um, Off the cuff question, because
Sure.
and I have to actually before I ask that off the cuff question, I mean, because I'm going to say, Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, because you started collecting comics a little bit later in your life, correct? Is that correct? I mean,
Yes.
you knew about Batman through the movies and
Mm-hmm.
so forth. I'm going to say, what a great gateway drug
Mm-hmm.
for you to pick up the Dark Knight Returns.
Yes.
I mean, because Frank Miller, when because when I read that when I because I would read Batman comics. I'm a long time collector, so I'm not trying to brag or anything, but
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I've been reading Batman comics, and Batman smiles. Batman was in the daytime,
Mm-hmm.
but when that came out, it blew my mind. It was like, oh my god, this is um this is another level of storytelling.
Mm.
It was like, wow. But I'm glad that you read that.
Me too.
That's, you know,
And you see, I love you. I mean, you know somewhat of our YouTube channel and what we do.
yes.
But me personally, I when I get into something, I just dive all the way in,
Yeah.
and that's what I did with comics. And I didn't know the history. I didn't know who Frank Miller was.
Hmm.
I didn't. I obviously knew who Batman was, but I didn't
Yes.
realize there was such a I mean, I had watched the 66 Batman, series, the Adam
Hmm.
West Batman. So I knew
Yeah.
there was, and I like that interpretation of Batman, don't get me wrong, but
Yes.
obviously it took a huge turn when Frank Miller changed the whole tone and of
Yes.
what he did with the Dark Knight Returns. But, unbeknownst to me, I just went into that comic and then yeah, like I said, everything changed from that point for me. And I was like, this is something I want to get into.
Hmm.
Um and here we are talking about comics years later.
Now, my it's an off the cuff question. And I'm just
Mhm.
gonna ask, um, because we both know that he rarely makes convention appearances. But have you ever met Frank Miller at a convention?
I have not. No, I definitely would love to. I can't. It's slipping my mind right now, but I know he just started a new publisher. He's
Yes.
started a new publishing company.
Yeah.
And I heard he's going to be doing some more appearances because of the new publishing company.
Oh. Mhm.
So might be a good opportunity here in the next couple of years if he's, hopefully that publisher does well and he, makes some more appearances. But definitely on my bucket list for sure.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Have
Yes.
have you, Jason, had the opportunity to meet him?
No.
Okay.
And for me, I'll touch on it right now, but we'll probably talk more when we talk about conventions. But the
Yeah.
only conventions that I've been exposed to are the ones here in Hawaii. That's all the ones. Yeah.
Okay.
I've never been to a mainland one. I would love to go to a mainland one day, but yeah.
Yeah. You have to, man. You're gonna have to do it eventually.
No, I have plans. I already talked to my wife, and yeah.
That's
So
great. Yeah.
um okay, let's see. Now that second comic shop that you went to that kind of helped you on and stuff. I mean, was that kind of like was that your real first comic book shop? Not I'm not talking about the first one where yeah, books are there,
Yeah. It was. Yeah. So that second shop I went to actually became my home store for quite some time. And there were a couple of employees there at that comic shop that just loved comics with their heart and
Okay,
soul.
yeah.
And
Yes.
I went in there, I told them what I was looking for, told them
Hmm.
Batman, Ninja Turtles,
Hmm.
and I'll always remember those couple of employees. And
Hmm.
unfortunately they ended up leaving the shop.
Mm.
But those two people, they directed me, the next story that they directed me to after the Frank Miller was we were actually in the Batman New 52 era at the time.
Okay. Yeah.
So they started me off with Batman New 52 and trade, Scott Snyder, Greg Capullo.
Hmm.
And I mean, what a second, a second
Yes.
dose of a drug, to to go
Yes.
from Frank Miller into the Snyder Capullo run. And again, I remember sitting in my bedroom. None of it. I didn't have a studio at the time. Didn't
Hmm.
have anything. Sitting in my bedroom, my wife was laying next to me going to sleep, and I had a lamp over the top of our bed,
Yeah.
and I'm just reading. I'm reading trades of Batman, and um,
Nice.
but those two employees at that comic store, they just kept
Mhm.
giving me great recommendations, and I'll forever be thankful to them. And it's unfortunate that they left, and I eventually left that shop.
Mhm.
And ironically, I am at the shop that I started with,
Mhm.
the one that
Oh
didn't
yeah.
direct me. Yeah. But they have some other employees there. I've met the manager, and man, they have been incredible. This is of course almost 6 years later.
Yeah,
From the first time I went in there, but they're my home shop now. And I have to give them huge kudos, man. I talk about it on our show quite a bit, but man, they have just really done a tremendous job with my pull list and my
nice. Hmm.
my ever changing desires and wishes. And but we have a system that they're very understanding, and they work with me a lot. They know I have a YouTube channel.
That's
um
nice.
and so then they watch the channel,
Hmm.
religiously. So like I said, I couldn't ask for more from those guys. Alien World, so best comic shop in San Antonio, I say.
That's very nice that you have your comic shop supports you in what you do. That's great. That is really
Yes,
great. And not only the channel, but it's like, yeah, hey, yeah, don't forget to try this, or hey, you should check this out. And oh, that's great. That is.
absolutely. Yeah, and I mean, I'll just walk in and just have conversation, just nerd conversation.
Yeah.
Which, that's what you want, that experience when you walk in. It's not just a transaction, it's that
Yes.
opportunity to, these are my people here in the shop. You
Yeah.
don't, so you get to have that conversation, you see other people. I've got familiar with them, and it's,
Hmm.
man, it's just such a great shop, and I'm very thankful for them.
It is. No, because because like I always try to because the thing is I figure out why I think comic shops are a little different than other retailers. Because like you said, you walk in, you can talk about you can nerd out about stuff. You know,
Hmm.
whatever the latest comic book, the whatever's going on, the movies or TV or upcoming conventions. Because it's not like you say, you're not, and even me, I don't go in just to, yep, I got my comics. All right, bye guys, and it's
Right.
in and out in 10 minutes. No, it's I talk, because my LCS, I actually have two LCSs, is
Mm.
Dragon's Lair, is my main one. And then I also have West Side Comics and Games. The owners are very good. I talk to them, talk story with them, you know, and I think the other cool thing um about comic shops is not only, and it kind of varies with stores, but it's like it's you could pull new stuff off the shelf, but then sometimes you have back issue. Some of them will have back issue bins depending on
Hmm.
space, or
Right.
even dollar bins too. And God, man,
Yeah.
those can suck you in for an hour and a half.
Yeah, they do. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And for me, it's so difficult to just walk into the shop and not look at everything. Even though
Yeah.
I've seen it the week before, but they have new inventory or new comics that came in, and trades that they've taken in, whatever the case. And every single week, I'm you can catch me there, and I'm always, looking at whatever it is that they have. And it's Dragon's Lair is such a great shop. We have two Dragon's Lair
Yes.
shops in San Antonio, and I love to just go by them. I have my primary shop.
Hmm.
I'm faithful. I have my pull list there.
Yes.
They give me a discount, and then if I'm in a certain part of town, I'm gonna stop at, whatever other shop is there. And there's two Dragons Lair, and they're excellent. And one of them, David and I met Rob Liefeld at one of the
Oh,
Dragons Lair shops a few months back, because he David is a huge, I don't know if you're familiar, but we call him the Pouch,
yeah, yeah,
David.
no, yes, yes.
Yeah, because of how big of a fan of Liefeld he is. And that all came from a episode of Lost in Comics where we did our
Hmm.
Mount Rushmore of comic artists,
Uh-huh.
and David put him on the Mount Rushmore. We have a lot of fun with it.
Yeah.
We laugh about that. Whatever you think of Rob Liefeld, I mean,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, he's in my opinion, a great artist. No
Yeah.
matter how much grief I give David. But all to say, Dragon's Lair, great shop.
Hmm.
They hosted Liefeld. I go in there. They do have some discount bins now, and
Hmm.
but great shop, yeah, for sure. So you got a good one there.
Oh, thank you. And just for the listeners, I'm gonna let the listeners know that Dragon's Lair in Hawaii is not associated with the. I'm thinking Dragon's Lair is a chain in Texas because I
I
think there,
okay,
yeah, because I think there's, I know there's a Dragon's Lair comic shop in Austin, Texas.
yeah,
I wonder if there is a
they are a
chain.
chain.
Yeah.
They are a chain, yeah, because they're the same.
Hmm.
They're the same two locations. They are a chain, and they when you go into their shop, they have a brochure and it has other locations
Oh,
out in
nice.
other
Yeah.
cities. And I figured that was what yours was, but maybe different, maybe
Yeah,
not
it's different.
part of that.
It's
Okay.
different because I remember because when Lucas told me when they opened up the shop, he figured, oh, we'll just call it Dragon's Lairs collectibles and comics. And he didn't know that there was another Dragon's Lair chain in Texas.
Ah, okay.
So then when and Dragon's Lair is in Mililani, and it's usually it's sort of on the way to the North Shore area, popular, beautiful, scenic North Shore beaches up there. So, and also too, it's close to um, they get a couple of military people. There's a couple of military bases close to them.
Mm,
Um, so they get the um, some of their customers are in the military. So
okay.
they'll say, "Oh, are you guys related? Are you guys associated with the one in Texas?" And they're, "Oh, no, there's one in Texas."
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's awesome. Yeah, like I said, great. They are great shops here, and sounds like you have a great Dragon's Lair there. So
Oh,
awesome.
yes. Yeah. All right. Let's see. Now let's get to the meat of this. So, um, how did Lost in Comics get started?
This is a good story. So get ready for this. But
Yeah.
so I never never would have imagined having a YouTube channel or a podcast. I hadn't even to, be quite frank, I had never even considered it or thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to give credit to my original co-host, Oscar.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how it happened. Um, when I started reading comics, I wanted to drag somebody else in with me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, at the very beginning. So I started going to the comic shop, started reading some of these stories. Oscar is my best friend.
Mm-hmm.
And I I told him, I said, "Hey, have you ever thought about reading comics?"
Mm-hmm.
And he kind of like chuckled at me and was like, it's kind of
Yeah.
silly, and I said, do you know they have Walking Dead comics? So he's a big fan of watching The Walking Dead
Mm-hmm.
on
Yes.
AMC at the time. I mean, huge diehard fan. I mean, he would have watch parties at his house, and he
Nice.
he didn't know that Walking
Yeah.
Dead was. I said I heard that it
Mm-hmm.
actually came from a comic, and he's like, no way. And I said, yeah, for real, man.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my entry, getting him into the comic store, and he and I kind of our journeys started around the same time.
Mm-hmm.
And from that first year that we got into comics, we at the end of the year, I mentioned to Oscar, I said, "Hey, man, we've read some really cool stuff this year." I
Mm-hmm.
said, "You want to get together and maybe we'll have some drinks, just me and you, and let's have our own like comic award
Yeah.
show."
Just yeah.
I mean, just me and him, no camera, no nothing
Yeah.
at the time. And we did that for 2 years. The first year, and then the next year, hey, let's do that
Nice.
again. That's man, that was so much fun. And we did, best writer, best
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
artist, best, comic, best horror
Mm-hmm.
comic, all these different categories that we just made up. And I would text him, all right, these are the categories. Do you have some categories? And
Mm-hmm.
say it was just for fun. That next year I went over to his house.
Mm-hmm.
I got there so we could do our end of the year,
Yeah.
our little end of the year festivities for comics. We walked up to his man cave upstairs, and he had a camera set up facing a table. And I like looked at him like, "What
Mm-hmm.
is this? what, what are we doing here, man?" Like, you're a big guy, and I'm what are we doing here, Oscar? And he laughed and he was like, man, he's like, we should put this on YouTube. Like he's like, let's do our what we do every year, a comic award,
Yeah,
little and well, I want to record it. And I want to put it on YouTube. And I kind of again, honestly, I didn't have any desire for it at the
yeah,
time, and I said okay. I said, I mean, I guess I don't mind, but kind of weird. Like it just feels weird having a camera in front of us while we're just doing what we always do.
yeah.
But long story short, I said, all right, let's do it, and we did that little end of the year
Hmm.
comic award show. And if you go back on our YouTube channel, it is the first video that we ever put
Nice.
out.
Hmm.
And I think what really pushed me to just keep doing it, and obviously I love comics, but I think a week after we put the video out,
Hmm.
um, I want to say it had maybe 150 views in the first,
Nice. Hmm.
first week,
Yeah.
and I thought, who is watching this?
Hmm. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm like, I, I didn't watch YouTube all that frequently. I listened to podcasts,
Hmm.
but I was just kind of shocked by like I thought, well, our wives will watch it, we'll watch it.
Yeah.
Maybe my parents will watch it.
Yeah.
My brother. But I guess when I saw that response, I it just kind of blew my mind, and I was like, wow, like, and that I think that just that initial reaction to that first video, I started thinking, well, man, I would love to share
Hmm.
what what Oscar and I have.
Yes.
So he and I both worked at the same company, and we both drove at the time.
Oh yeah. Hmm.
And so in the middle of the day, he and I would be driving separate vehicles, of course,
Hmm.
but we would be on Bluetooth talking about comics for almost 5 6 hours a day sometimes,
Nice.
just chatting about stories, and we
Hmm.
talk about life, but
Yeah.
we talked about comics a lot.
Hmm.
And you know I told Oscar, I was like, we'll just talk about the things we talk about, in private. We'll just get in, let's do that now with the channel that, we started.
Hmm.
Um, Now, I want to say when we originally started, we didn't have a name
Hmm.
for the
Hmm.
channel.
No, no, no.
So,
Yeah.
about a year prior to the YouTube channel starting, Oscar and I were going to start we were going to attempt to do like some comic auctions on Facebook.
Okay.
And so, just to kind of support the hobby, sell some
Yes. Yeah.
comics, buy
Hmm.
some comics. And we had seen other people doing it. At the time, about a year prior to the YouTube thing, I had created a little cheap logo, not the one you see now for Lost in Comics. Um, but I had created this little thing, and it just said, lost in comics, lost in comics and collectibles,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that was going to be the name of the auction. And the origination behind that is just obviously when we read comics, we get lost in them. Like you
Yes.
go into these other worlds, you forget about the harsh realities sometimes that we live in,
Hmm.
and comics can really bring you joy, and stories can take you out of that negative space sometimes that we find ourselves in life. And I put that name for the auction, and I said, hey, let's use that name for our YouTube channel. And
Hmm.
so boom, put it out there. Lost in Comics, created a Twitter, created an Instagram,
Hmm.
and we just started going from there. And we started recording once a week.
Hmm.
And it's funny, when we first started, we were actually not doing live shows. We never did a live show until COVID hit.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah.
yeah, but we actually started the channel in December of 2019. That's when we did
Hmm.
that end of the year. And then so those first 3 months up until March, we were just recording with a camera. He and I'd go over to his house, he'd come to my
Hmm.
house. And then March of 2020, COVID hit, and that was our first live stream, and which became a kind of a staple of what we did there for
Hmm.
quite some time. So, but yeah, I mean that is how it all began. So just he and I having a good time, end of the year award show,
Hmm.
and put it out there, and just haven't looked back ever since.
That is so cool. That is
Yeah.
really nice. Um, I'm now I'm just making a little fun,
Hmm.
but that's kind of funny how, hey, Oscar, you want to try out this drug? You watch this show. You want to
Yeah.
try this drug called The Walking Dead? Yeah.
Right. I had to get him in somehow, man. And that, what's funny is right before I got him into comics, he had actually got me into playing Magic the Gathering.
Oh my
Uh
no.
yeah, so when I asked him, have you been to a comic shop? He said, "Well, I mean, I've been inside because I buy the Magic
Yeah.
cards."
Mhm.
He goes, "But he'd never looked at the comic wall or anything. He just walked over to the cards
Yeah.
and did his thing with the cards." So I mean, he knew about the shop. He knew that there were comics in
Mhm.
there. But then like I said, when I expressed The Walking Dead to him, that just for him, that was
Mhm.
his little light bulb moment, and
Oh yeah.
he fell in love with it at the time, and yeah. But yeah, it is a bit of like a here, take this needle. Yeah.
Yeah.
Change your life.
But I
Uh,
have to say, but again, for Oscar, for you, this part I'm being serious. It's just
sure.
for you to, like already he's watching The Walking Dead and he's going, oh my God, I can't believe the stuff they can do on TV.
Hmm.
But for you to introduce him to the comics where, because the comics have done so much worse stuff because TV won't allow it.
All
But
right.
I mean, but the thing is, but it made the story go, oh my God, this is how brutal, this is how brutal,
Yeah.
some people can get, and they can do it in the store in the comics.
Right.
And I'm sure that must have like got him really hooked and go, wow.
Originally Oscar was more hooked than I was at one point.
Hmm.
I mean, you know, I was on another channel last week, Midlife Vices, great guys,
Yes.
Grabs Granite, comic guy Steve, shout out to them. And I was on their channel last week, and I don't mean this in a negative way. Oscar would totally agree with me. Um, but Oscar's got he's not addicted to drugs or alcohol or anything like that. But he has I said he has an addictive personality. So whatever he kind of like what I said, when I get into something, I go deep.
Yes.
And I'm similar, but Oscar, when he gets into something, I mean, he just goes for it.
Yeah.
So when we got him into The Walking Dead, I
Uh-huh.
mean, he not only wanted to, I was like, hey, they had this omnibus, or the compendium.
Yes.
You can read the whole, there was three at the time, and
Yeah.
he's like, no, I want all the issues, and I'm like, man, these issues are they're expensive, bro.
Yes. Yeah.
And so we look at, he never had the opportunity to own a number one,
Yeah.
or I would say I don't even think the top 10
Yeah.
issues, but I mean, he built a nice Walking Dead collection, first appearances.
Yes. Hmm.
Remember when he got I think it was number 19, the first Michonne.
Hmm.
I mean, he just he went all in.
Yeah.
And so we definitely influenced each other at
Yes.
the beginning. Then we'd meet at a shop, and he and I would start eyeing the same books, and we'd kind of look at each other and be like, "Are you gonna take it, or am I?" And so it was great, and similar to me. I mean, we got him in with The Walking Dead, but
Hmm.
he starts looking at the wall and seeing Superman and Batman and,
Yeah. Hmm.
oh, Wolverine. There's comics, and I'm like,
Yes.
it's all here, bro. Like
Hmm.
it's so yeah, our journeys were interlocked at the beginning, and yeah, we went all in very quickly.
Well,
We had to learn a lot of lessons too. Yeah.
no, but the thing is, but the, but I mean, Chris, I mean, literally, you're among friends, you're among listeners who collect comics, and we
Hmm.
know,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
we know what you're talking about. Where it's kind of like, you know, because literally, it's in some sense for some of us, it's this is like, you know, quote unquote one of the good vices. It does
Hmm.
cost money, but if you want that,
Yeah.
I'm just pulling something out. The first appearance of Harley Quinn in comic book, I mean, you, people save up their
Hmm.
money and buy it, you know, because
Yeah.
they want it. Yeah.
Take a credit card out for it. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I'm very familiar. Yeah.
I'm sorry. I have to. Sorry. I don't mean I'm going off the cuff here, but I have to tell you two stories about the Walking Dead comic.
Okay.
So the first time I saw Walking Dead #1 on the stands when it came out, I was like, "Oh, what is this?" I open it. I flip through it. It's black and white crap. Put it down.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man.
I just left money on the table.
Oh goodness, man.
Now the second story that I heard, this is a lot better. Um, I was at West Side Comics and Games, and I think the cut. I mean the story goes. It was either I think Julius, the owner of West Side Comics and Games, was telling me this, and I think Robert Kirkman. I know Robert Kirkman came down for the Amazing Comic Con either in 2015 or 2016. So Julius told me that one of his customers, a guy who was in the military, when he loves zombies, and before the whole zombie genre exploded, he bought two copies of The Walking Dead #1.
Oh, oh wow.
Because he loves zombies. He didn't think it was going to take off or any, and I think the guy didn't think it was going to last that long because
Right.
but he kept it. He kept it safe. He had Robert Kirkman. The guy's plan was to have Kirkman sign it, get a CG seed. Oh my God,
Oh wow.
yeah,
Wow.
yeah.
That's incredible.
I'm,
Does he still have it?
I don't, I'm gonna say I don't know because one, the guy was in the military too. I never followed up with Julius, but I'm sure the guy does. Yeah.
Oh man. That's
And then
incredible. I
I'm
can't
gonna ask,
imagine.
did Oscar ever meet Robert? Did you guys ever meet Robert Kirkman?
No, no, never met Robert Kirkman. To my knowledge, he has he's avoided our
Area.
halfway point of Texas, but I think he has made some appearances way up north in North Texas. And Texas is huge.
Hmm.
So I mean, normal states, you can just go right. It takes you an hour to get out of it. It takes us, a good 5 hours to get out of
Hmm.
5 6 hours to get out of Texas. But
Hmm.
yeah, but never met Kirkman. But that would be great. I
Hmm.
wish he would have, but no.
Yeah. Okay. If you don't mind, I'm gonna continue on. Um, let's see. Because I know for the listeners, you because I know you changed the schedule, right? Just recently, within the last month. May I ask?
Yes.
Can you let our listeners know when you guys do live streaming?
So as far as live streams, the last Thursday of every month, we do a live stream,
Hmm.
and that's just our chance to just get to hang out with everybody, kind of go over the month and review
Hmm.
comics. What were the best comics this month, any comic news that happened over the month, any huge changes, things like that. But just really just for us to hang out with
Hmm.
everybody that might be watching, and it's just a great time, just positive energy.
Yes.
But that is the one live stream we were doing a live show every single week,
Yes. Every
um
Thursday. Yeah.
every Thursday nights doing the live stream. Loved it. It's a lot of work, to do
Yes.
to maintain that. We 137 issues that we've done of Lost in Comics,
Hmm.
the live show.
Hmm.
So it is a labor of love, but it's also it's a labor, for
Yes. No.
sure.
Yeah. Yeah. I understand.
And to be completely honest, for me, there's so many things that I've wanted to explore with the YouTube channel that
Hmm.
over the last couple of years, doing the live show hasn't afforded me those opportunities. For instance, I have wanted to really deep dive into some, monumental stories. Dark Phoenix Saga. That is
Hmm.
one that we're going to be doing here coming up soon.
Oh, okay.
But just going through that book and doing a complete breakdown, how this book affected people's journeys. My co-host David,
Hmm.
um, he was a young dude when this story came out, and it was one of his favorite,
Yes. Hmm.
X-Men stories of all time. Um, so I'm curious, his take on it. But these are things that we just haven't had the opportunity to do with doing a live, preparing every week to week, preparing a
Yes.
live show. I've wanted to do just when things happen, like for instance, this Superman news that broke over the weekend from New York Comic Con,
Hmm.
with the future of Superman in 2023. We're getting a new comic book. We're getting a comic book canceled.
Hmm.
We have a direction for Superman. Things like that, when they come up, I like to dive into that news and really, put that out there for me to kind of enjoy that news and to present it, to our listeners.
Yes.
So all of these types of things I've wanted to do for so long, and now I feel like we finally have that opportunity. It
Hmm.
is a change for people that have watched our show for a while,
Yes.
but it's also an opportunity for, like for us. It's also helpful for the YouTube algorithms, from
Hmm.
my research, for them they're not very friendly with live streams as far as spreading those out, to new viewers and new listeners.
Hmm.
So it just felt like it felt like the time to do it. And same channel, we're still doing the same things, but
Hmm.
I feel like now we have an opportunity to do even more. This is the third week in a row that I've actually, on a Tuesday night, been with a different podcast or a different show,
Yeah.
which is something I couldn't do before either with
Yes. Hmm.
the
Yeah.
live stream. I just didn't have time. I was packing so much into every single week. I
Hmm.
didn't have a lot of opportunity to share time with other channels and other people I wanted to get to know in the
Hmm.
community. Like I said, this is the third week in a row. I was telling my wife, I was like, man, I love this, like being able to
Yeah.
hang out on a Tuesday night with other fellow comic lovers and
Yes.
podcasts. And
Hmm.
so yeah, so that's what we're doing now. And I'm like I said, having a great time. We have a good direction,
Hmm.
and I'm kind of slowly honing that into what we want it to be exactly. So yeah,
But it sounds like, but what's really good, Chris, is that Lost in Comics is continually evolving. That's really nice. That it's like
yeah,
you're still, it's kind of like, okay, hey, we've got to change the format because the live stream, it's gotten to the point where it's just eating too much, eating too
yeah,
much time. I want to do other things, but still be considered, under the, keep it under Lost in Comics channel, and that's
right,
great. Yeah, you know.
yeah. I think it's I remember early on during, when we started the show. If you watch some of our early episodes of Lost in Comics, early
Hmm.
issues, something that was very important to Oscar and I. There's a couple of things. One of them was to remain a positive force in
Yes. Hmm.
the community, positive force on YouTube. I listened to other podcasts, and when we started doing YouTube, I started watching a lot more comic
Hmm.
content, and I saw something from a lot of channels, and that is just controversy,
Yeah.
negativity. I mean, let's face it, we all have enough of that in the world already, to
Yes.
where
Hmm.
why do we want that mixed in with you know, this beautiful thing that we all love, that we
Yeah.
get an escape from reality, or that we get
Hmm.
lost in? Why do we want more of that in our, in this fun thing that we're doing?
Yeah.
So, number one was that we wanted to be positive. We wanted to bring that, um, what we do in real life. We wanted to emulate that in the channel, right? So,
Hmm.
um, and then second of all was just have a blast, like, and
Yeah.
if you watch some of the early episodes, Oscar and I used to do a lot of skits,
Okay.
just funny,
Yeah. Hmm.
stuff between he and I. I remember the first year on Halloween, we did a top 10 horror comics of 2020,
I remember. Yes.
and we did like a Michael Myers, like, he was attacking me, and
Uh,
I had to give him the top 10, before he killed me, type of thing. But just things like that, doing skits. And Oscar would do Joker impressions. He'd put a Joker mask on.
hmm.
Um, I play the guitar, so I developed this character, and we called him Hottie. You know, he had
Uh-huh.
long blonde hair,
Mm-hmm.
and I would play the guitar, and then do hot books of the week, things like
Mm-hmm.
that. Um, and that was it was important to us to maintain that fun
Mm-hmm.
atmosphere, fun positivity in the channel. And which is another, I feel, another blessing of the way that this direction that we're headed in, is to give us more time to, I feel like in a small way we've gotten away from like the skits, and I love doing that stuff.
Oh
Maybe
yeah.
I don't know if people like it or not, but I love doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there's a place where I think it's fun to have a little variety in your comics, and we did
Yes.
a couple with David, the worst comic shop owner. I don't know if you saw that one.
Not yet. No, not
We did
yet.
we did a little comic skit, worst comic shop owner of all time. And I'm going in like a new customer, and he's just insulting me, with what.
Yes. I,
So just things like that, that
yes.
you'll start to see more of again. That we have this, this opportunity now.
Uh-huh.
um, but I don't know where I'm going with all this, except to say, that's what we're doing, and I'm excited about it. We are constantly evolving, and
Yes.
and I was gonna say is at the beginning I was pretty hard headed and stubborn about doing the live show.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I had a vision for it that I wanted it to be something like a Tonight Show,
Yes, yeah.
something you'd see for comics, something that you would. I mean, you don't see that, in a lot. I mean, you have a lot of back and forth. I watched a lot of guys just hang out, which is cool,
Yeah.
on StreamYard and just chatting, and
Mm-hmm.
3-hour streams and things like that. But I really wanted to have something very organized, something
Yes. Mm-hmm.
with a lineup and comedy, and
Yeah.
but man, it is a lot of work. So
Yes.
so and but it's that's where we've come from, and we are evolving now, I think, into more of a recording
Mm-hmm.
style with some live streams mixed in. We'll continue to do our live interviews. um
Yes. Mm-hmm.
so yeah, which has been another fun staple of our show, the interviews.
Yes. Okay. So the interview. So now let's see. I know because you've interviewed some great creators, Rodney Barnes, Axel Alonso, Jason Shaw, Alexander. Um, for our listeners, who else have and that shows only two or three that I saw the list
Man,
on their YouTube channel, but like who else have you guys interviewed?
man, we have been extremely blessed, lucky, however you want to say it. But I remember our first interview. I want to give him a shout out, Carl Mostert. I don't know if
Mm-hmm.
you're familiar with him. DC, he's done some work with DC, done some indie books, but he's an artist, great artist, and he is actually the artist that did our variant. We did a variant cover for the Lost in Comics channel.
Yes.
And I know you had wanted to talk about that as well.
Yeah.
I'll mention it right
Yeah.
now.
We yeah.
So Carl Mostert, he became a friend of ours very quickly early on in our YouTube channel. And how that began was we were having a show one night, live show,
Mm-hmm.
and I see Carl Mostert's name pop up in our chat, in the live chat, and he's like making jokes, in our live chat while we're talking,
Right.
I kind of like looked at Oscar, and I was like, "Is this Carl Mostert, the artist?"
Yeah.
And he was like, "Yeah, it's me," and and it was just the greatest, it was the greatest thing. And I was shocked, I was like, and I was geeking out, nerding out at the time, like, wow,
Yes.
this DC artist, I'm trying to remember at the time. I think he was doing the deceased. Is it deceased? And what is it? Yeah, I can't remember. It's one of the spin-offs. The Not
Mm-hmm.
the original deceased. Unkillables. No, Unkillables. Okay, I don't remember. But
Oh
it's one of the
yeah.
deceased. It was a 3-issue run of
Mm-hmm.
deceased. Tom Taylor writing, and
Mm-hmm.
Carl Mostert on the art. And he, at the time, he was writing that, or drawing that. Um, and came in the chat, and then he followed us on Twitter.
That's
And
nice.
after he followed us, that opened up a DM opportunity. I sent
Mm-hmm.
him a DM,
Yeah.
um, and I mentioned, hey, I would love for you to come on the show and just have a good time with us. And he was like, I would love to, and I'd love to come on the show. And
Nice.
this was probably, I don't know, maybe the fourth month of our channel,
Yeah.
starting. It was a little right after COVID, and so he came on the channel, and I was nervous as heck, man. I mean, I was just
Mm-hmm.
in my mind, these guys are making the stuff that I am loving reading
Yeah.
every single week. This guy works with DC,
Mm-hmm.
so he came on the channel, and we had a great time with him, and it kind of birthed, that relationship with him. And periodically we just check in on each other. We have conversation. I ask him how he's doing, what's he
Yeah.
working on, um, and with that, the opportunity came for a variant cover that we did. And this particular publisher, which I actually have the book right here. I pulled
Mm-hmm.
it out, but it's Second Sight Publishing, which is a fairly new publisher. I believe they
Mm-hmm.
started less than 2 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And the CEO, president, I can't remember his exact title, maybe chief creative officer,
Mm-hmm.
messaged us on Twitter,
Oh, nice.
and he said, "Hey, I've been watching your YouTube channel," and he's like, would you guys be interested in doing a variant cover with, we're a new publisher. We just started out, but we want to afford channels like yours an opportunity for, variant covers. And man, I was like, what? Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I would
Yes.
love, I mean, we'd love to do a variant cover. Like, what does it entail? And he's like,
Mm-hmm.
well, you need to get an artist,
Yes.
or we can pick one for you,
Mm-hmm.
and we can pick a cover for you. And he mentioned a few books, and he's like, are you interested in any of these books? Are you reading any of them? And um, I had just read a review copy of Duplicant,
Yes.
from that publisher, from Second Sight Publishing. And I told him, I said, man, I would love to have it on that book,
Mm-hmm.
Duplicant. And he's like, all right, it's done. Do you want to get an artist? Do you want to have? He gave me some samples of some covers that they had. I
Yes.
said, I'd really love to have somebody do it on our side. And I contacted Carl
Mm-hmm.
Mostert, and I said, man, I said, we have this opportunity, Carl. I said, I feel like you're part of our family,
Yeah.
here. And I said, and I totally get it if you're too busy or whatever. But I would love for you to draw this variant cover. And he's like, done. When do you need it?
Nice.
And and I gave him the deadline, and he's like, what are we drawing? And I gave him a summary of the story. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
this is the story. Is I want kind of a darker cover. I said, I've seen some of the covers that have been drawn for this comic,
Yeah.
and I said they're nice. I said, but I want something a little that captures the. It's about, organ donation, and
Yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and, and so he's like, okay. And so we kind of talked through some of the stuff, and I'm not sure if you've seen it or not, but
Yes, I
I
have.
know we're audio right now, but the covers right there, and it's got the guy's holding lungs in his hand, and
It's
you
like
got
he's like you. It's a
like
book
on
like they're at a butcher shop,
it's a butcher shop. Yeah,
and the
and
guy's like, yeah, he's holding like lungs, like, yeah, you want
yeah,
this pair of lungs, or you want the other one, behind the counter,
right. And he's got this
that,
creepy smile,
yeah,
and in the back, and the behind the butcher glass, you see, you got a fresh elbow, a shin, cornea, eyeballs, livers. It's just he's Carl sent this draft back to us, and I was like, oh my gosh, Carl. I was like, dude, this is incredible. And he was just going to give us the black and white. He said, I'm not really a great colorist.
yeah,
um I said, well, let me reach out and see who we can get.
mm-hmm.
And we ended up finding a colorist on Twitter, just word of mouth, and she just did a phenomenal job. um
Nice.
and colored the whole thing, sent it back, and
Mm-hmm.
had our first variant cover. And um
So cool.
first and only, and I would love to do another one.
Hmm.
I obviously I paid Carl, for
Oh
his
yes, yeah.
art, and we had to pay for the books, and
Hmm.
but yeah, I would still love to do. I'd love to do another one, and I've kind of been talking to somebody about one, but I don't have
Yeah,
final,
yeah.
a word on it yet. So, but hopefully soon.
Oh my God,
But
that's.
it means so much to me. It's not, and I don't mean this in an ugly way or anything. I've seen other people put out variant covers, and sometimes they're just stock,
Mhm, yeah.
things like that. But when you have a variant cover, man, like I want to put a lot of thought into it. I want
Mhm,
to get, having
yeah.
Carl do it for us, like that first. I mean, kind of just in the history of our channel, having him
Yes.
do it, it just meant so much to me. And if we ever do it again, it's gonna have to be that type of opportunity where it's
Mhm,
really special.
yeah.
So however many copies it is, it's very special for us, for me. Yeah.
That's so
Yeah.
cool. That
You know,
is.
I didn't even answer your original question. I got into Carl and variant covers, but other interviews that we've had on the channel,
Mhm,
you mentioned Rodney Barnes, Jason Sean Alexander. Those guys are the writer and the artist of Philadelphia.
mhm.
We've had I
Mike
forgot the other,
Diodato.
Mike Diodato Jr.,
Mhm.
legendary Marvel, who's doing a lot of work with AWA now. We've
Yes.
had Cullen Bunn, great,
Oh,
one of the
nice. Yeah.
greatest horror comic writers of all
Mhm.
time. Um, Sean Lewis. We've had
Yes.
man Philip Kennedy Johnson, Action
Mhm.
Comics writer. Um, Jeremy Adams, writer of Flash, the current
Oh,
Flash
nice.
writer.
Yes.
He's been on a couple of times. John Lee's, if
Mhm.
everybody knows John Lee's, it's AWA writer. Hotel just
Yes.
went off to be optioned for TV or
Mhm.
movie. So I'm super happy for him. The Miranda brothers, We Live, we've had
Mhm.
them on. Chris Condon, that Texas Blood, Jacob Phillips, and Chris
That,
Condon on the
that's right.
show.
Yeah.
So just, like I said, we've been tremendously, lucky, blessed to meet
Mhm.
these creators. Zach Kaplan, is on this year. Just so many
Mhm.
great creators that I just absolutely adore, and I geek out every time I get the opportunity to talk to them. So it's been incredible. Yeah.
Now I'm gonna ask, and if you can't tell me, that's fine too. But do you guys have anyone lined up for any future episodes?
Yes. I mentioned one of them a moment ago. The nice thing when you've been doing a channel for a while, right, is you create some relationships, and
Yes.
sometimes you want to have people back because they're doing new
Yeah.
work. I can tell you, I'm working on getting a date, hopefully for November,
Mhm.
for Philip Kennedy Johnson.
Oh, that's nice.
So they have all the new Superman news that we were
Mhm.
just did a video for this week. I mean, he has done an excellent job. I don't know if you've been keeping up with Action Comics, what he's done with the War World saga this whole year. But I mean, it was a tremendous run ever since he got on that title.
Mhm.
It has been one of my favorite Superman runs that I have ever read.
Yes.
And
Mhm.
we were lucky enough to have him on January of 2021 when he was just starting off with Action Comics, and now the announcement was made. He's going further with it. He's going to be the headline writer going
Mhm.
forward. Um, so we're going to have him on in October, in November, and then I'm pretty excited about we have Joe. I think his last name, if you say it, Mulvey or Mulvey, but he's a comic book artist, and
Mhm.
he is doing a book with John Lee's The Last Ride of Pillar and Pride, which is coming out in, I believe, October or November also.
Oh,
So
okay.
he's going to be coming on at the end of this month in October,
Oh, okay.
um, and I'm really excited about that. And that was John Lee's reaching out and asking if, hey, would you like to get the artist on? And I was like,
Oh,
I'd
that's
love to
nice.
have him on.
Yeah.
So we're gonna talk about the book, talk about his past, and
Mhm.
so yeah, just incredible stuff. I'm looking forward to those. So those are the two we have planned for this year,
Mhm.
and then we're gonna have a big end of the year award show that we love to do. That's become a staple here.
Mm-hmm.
And we will have, a big nomination show in December, our
Mm-hmm.
best of award show, and then in January we'll have a big award show, and it'll be presented by
Mm-hmm.
myself and a slew of comic creators that will actually present the awards. So it's gonna be a great
Nice.
time. Yeah.
All
Yeah.
right. Now I'm going to ask you, which creator would you like to come on the show?
Man, it's a good question. And I'm gonna mention three just
Yeah,
because,
that's
man,
fine.
I could name a bunch
I
that I would
I
still love.
I hear you. Yes.
At the top of the list, um, two people at the very top. Todd McFarlane.
Oh,
I
mm-hmm.
mean, that is, I remember Oscar and I, first year of the show, when we started getting a few interviews,
Mm-hmm.
he and I were just dreaming, like, man, can you imagine having McFarlane, talking
Yes.
to Todd McFarlane, and the history, and, just to pick his brain, have a conversation with him.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how much words I would get out, talking
Yeah.
to
Mm-hmm.
some, the
Yes.
Todd father, but
Yeah.
um, he is definitely at the top of the list. Secondly, my favorite writer of all time, Ed Brubaker. Um,
Oh, yes.
man, I
Mm-hmm.
at the top of the list, Ed Brubaker, Todd McFarlane, Ed Brubaker. Um, when I read Kill or Be Killed,
Mm-hmm.
from Ed Brubaker, it was my first experience reading an Ed Brubaker story.
Mm-hmm.
And up to that point, I had read a few indie comics, but when I read Kill or Be Killed for the first time, it opened up another world for me,
Yes.
where
Mm-hmm.
I wanted to give indie comics more of a chance, and
Mm-hmm.
in reading that, it just, like I said, opened up my world to a whole other slew of comics.
Yeah.
And so Ed Brubaker, and then thirdly, Jeff Lemire. um,
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm.
so just another fantastic writer who has, to me, become a top three, writer,
Mm-hmm.
a current writer for me. Um, I mean, there's so many great stories. Sweet Tooth,
Mm-hmm.
Black Hammer,
Oh, yeah. Yes, that's right.
Royal
Yes.
City. I
Yeah.
mean, just Descender, Ascender, all these great comics. And with of the three, I truly believe that Jeff Lemire will be on our show next year.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
So I think, part of being a content creator, and I mentioned this to you before, is sometimes you got to be that little gnat on the wall. You got
Mm-hmm.
you got to be like, hey, you know, man, I'd love to have you on the show at some point. And sometimes you're gonna get swatted away, and
Yeah.
you know, um, but for me, it's always about sometimes showing the love to these creators. I mean, they get a lot of hate as well, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
um, showing a genuine respect and appreciation for their work. And I have done that over and over with Jeff Lemire, and he
Yes.
responded to me finally, a few weeks back, and
Mm-hmm.
he's been in the process of filming Essex County, which is going to be a show, I
Mm-hmm.
believe, on Amazon.
Okay.
So he's been on set, doing that, and he replied and said, "I promise we're going to do it." Get to. I
That's
was like,
nice.
so, and I just, again, blew my mind, and I was like, oh my gosh, Jeff Lemire, finally, I can't even tell you how many times I've commented on his
Mm-hmm.
on his posts on Twitter and Instagram, over the probably the last 2 years. Um, so I'm really really excited about that, and so hopefully we'll have some news on that soon.
Oh, but that's nice. That congratulations on that. That is
Thank you.
that you
Yeah.
reached out to him. And the thing was, it's nice that he reached back and go, we'll work something out, man.
He's like, I'm gonna get you to stop commenting on my.
Yeah.
No, no, yeah. I mean, these are great people, man. So I'm thrilled, and hopefully, like I said, we'll have some news on that 2023 when he
Yeah.
gets a little less busy. Yeah,
Um, are you okay with time, or can we go a
yeah,
little past, or okay?
yeah. Keep
Because
going. We're good.
one thing I
Having a
wanted
good
to
time.
talk to you about, I love on your Twitter feed, every Wednesday you drop your new comic book day video. I love it. So how, like, can you tell our listeners, when did you start that? I'm going to be honest because I can't remember when, but whenever I see it on my feed, it's like, it's so cool. So
Yeah. Yeah. So I think one of the one of the best things about being a fan of comics, right, is and it's something that very early on I realized, like, man, how many people that are in a hobby, or how many people in the world get to experience what we do every single Wednesday?
yes, yeah,
Like, what
yeah,
other hobbies, are there brand new, I know, I think if you collect vinyl, I think, there's a certain day of the week that new vinyl, a shop will get put out new
yes,
vinyls, things like that. But for us, we get a whole,
yes.
I mean, a wall full of new titles, new issues, and it is just such a, I call it, Christmas on every single week,
Oh, yes,
and we're getting gifts every single week. So when it comes down to like birthdays and Christmas, I tell my wife I spend a lot of money on my hobby. I am
yes,
totally
I hear
fine
you.
with you either not getting me anything or
Yeah,
just take me to dinner,
yeah,
because I live out Christmas and birthdays every week.
yeah,
And it's a beautiful thing, and I want to show, I want to, part of that for me is, it's one thing to get your books and go pick them up, put them in their bags and boards,
yeah.
and you read them,
Hmm.
you take it all in by yourself. But it's another thing when you get to experience this with a comic community of other people like yourself, Jason, that share the same love for the
Yes.
books, the
Hmm.
characters. So for me, that is something that I think for the most part we all have in common on Wednesdays. We're all out there
Yes.
getting those new comics.
Yes.
And I have a Twitter account, I have an Instagram, so I'm like, I get to share this with everybody, and I love to do it. I mean, it's it's become part of my life, like
Hmm.
all of the posts and the new comic book day haul, and it's something I look forward to every week. To, hey, this is what I pulled this week.
Yes.
Here's my books. Boom, 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 boom.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, I mean, that's what it is, and it's a joy for me. It's a routine that I look forward to.
Hmm.
I
Yeah.
work a full-time job outside of the channel, and it's my little escape, my little
Yeah.
break, during
Yes.
the day, getting the comics, making the video.
Hmm.
And then once I do it, I'm like, all right, back to
Hmm.
work, and start working. And but yeah, it is one of the greatest joys of the week for me, doing that little video. I'm glad you like it too. It's fun for me.
And then also too, on your YouTube channel, correct me if I'm wrong, is it like every Thursday you do your top, and it's not a live stream, but you
Hmm.
do like a short, like either 10-15 minute video of your top three comics, and you kind of go over what's in it. So
Correct. Yeah. So
mhm.
I do a top three every single week. Call it the LNC top three, Lost in Comics top three, and it's just I read that stack of comics that you see on Wednesday
Yes.
on Instagram and Twitter. Wednesday night, man, my wife is so gracious to me, even tonight,
Yes. Yes.
getting to do this, having these opportunities. And on Wednesday, I read all of my comics all in one night.
Nice.
And I have such a great time doing it. And
Hmm.
I, out of all that stack of comics I read, as I'm reading them, my routine is, man, if this book, just you finish a book sometimes and you're like, oh my gosh,
Hmm.
that was incredible,
Yes.
or
Yes.
you felt something, you all of a sudden you're like, man, why is my eye watery, like,
Hmm.
those books, those issues you read,
Yes.
those issues deserve more. They deserve to be talked about, and it could be,
Hmm.
sometimes it's a, an indie publisher of a comic that nobody's reading.
Yes.
um Last week in my top three, was it last week, there's a book called New Think by AWA.
I think yes.
And
I think yeah. I think that was because I remember. Yeah, I think that was last week.
yeah,
I think yeah.
I think that was last week. And again, I think it's a book that not a lot of people are talking about or
Mhm,
reading. But when I read it, it was just like it's just very eye opening, and it's about um, the effects of technology on our world,
mhm,
and not only what it's done to the individual,
mhm,
which this is a whole other conversation you could have,
mhm,
you could
yeah.
go off on a tangent here, but also the effect that it's had on us as a society.
Mhm,
And you know we've been granted all these blessings and technology wise, and
mhm,
we have everything at our fingertips, and yet
yes.
somehow we are not living in a utopia. We are living in a
Yes.
very divisive world, and you have to question that, like, why,
Mhm,
and I think about that stuff a lot already. So when I
mhm,
read a book, like there's this book New Think, and that is what it is about.
mhm,
And that was issue 4 that just came out. It's a 5 issue run. um that book, every time I've read it, it just gives me that I just very, like, it stays with me, it lingers with
mhm,
me, like,
yes.
man, this, if everybody would read this,
Yeah.
maybe we could all kind of, like, hey, let's wake up and let's get on the same page, man. Like,
Mhm,
we're on the same team here.
yeah.
um so, with that said, a book like that may not get a lot of attention. So I love doing the top 3 every single week.
Mhm,
And I try to release that either Thursday or Friday, but
mhm,
by the end of the week. And that's my top 3. I'll do some mini reviews on those
yes.
books, why I like them, why they're
Mhm,
on my top 3, and then some other books that I also
mhm,
enjoyed in that stack of comics. But it's an opportunity for people that have also read those books.
mhm,
Hey, I don't know about you, but, like, I love to hear other people talk about comics I'm reading.
mhm,
It's like, oh, sometimes it'll trigger something, like, I didn't think of that when I was reading the book, or
yeah.
so it's a lot of fun for me. It's very raw and
Mhm,
very. I'm reading the books. I'm taking mental notes as I'm doing
mhm,
it, and then I'm putting out the video either
mhm,
the same night or the next day.
yeah.
So, but yeah, it's every single week. Lost in Comics top 3, and it's one of my favorite things to do. Yeah.
No, but that's great. And while you were talking about that, Chris, the thing it, it's the thing, you know, um, because I'm gonna say for you, you got into comics at the right time because now correct because you kind of started off in the New 52, right? Started
Correct.
because the
Yes.
thing is at that time there's so many publishers, and so many publishers, so many um outlets, that um because for me, I for not because for me it's like, you know, the superhero genre always be Marvel and DC. And that's great. No, and I love that. I love it.
Yeah.
Sometimes they'll have great storylines, and sometimes it's just pure escapism. But
Hmm.
then you have all these independent comics like the AWA, where it's like going, whoa, what is this? And it's short. They make it only 5 issues because you know,
Right.
and it's one of those where it's like, wow, you can stop and think about the story and stuff like that. You know,
Right.
it's just great. Yeah.
Yeah, I love it, and it's all I've known, for the most part. Like you said, I came into a time where comics have changed, and
Yes.
I have these conversations a lot, with David, my co-host, because he was in that era where you were buying comics at
Yeah.
a convenience store on a
Yeah.
rack,
Yes.
and I'm like, man, that would be so. I wish I could have had that opportunity.
Yeah.
I never did, but um, and the formatting's changed, and
Yes.
for some people that's like, it's easy to make that change and to evolve, and for
Hmm.
other people it's not, like, this is not what I grew up with,
Yeah. Yes. Hmm.
which I totally get that
Yeah.
also, because it's nostalgia. And but yeah, you're absolutely right. For me, and I'm gonna pick on David because there's that old saying, you can't teach an old dog new tricks,
Hmm.
but you can,
Yes. Yeah.
and David, with what I just told you, when he and I first started talking about comics, we were talking about them at work before he was
Hmm.
on the channel, and he and I worked together, and we had he was not reading comics at the time. We would just talk about old, like he would tell me about his old comics, and
Yeah.
but he was not reading anything new. He was not
Yes.
collecting, but he still
Hmm.
had his collection.
Yeah.
He's a huge X-Men fan. That's his,
Oh my God.
his
Yes.
bread and butter,
Yes.
Yeah. So he loves the X-Men. And what I love about how he and I, our relationship, and our comic relationship started, is there were things that I hadn't read from the
Hmm.
past, say the original Secret Wars,
Yes. Yeah.
I had never read it, um, Crisis on Infinite Earths. I had never read it.
Hmm.
I would sometimes open those books and just be like, "Wow, this is a lot of dialogue. This is
Yes.
a lot.
Yeah. No.
This is a
Yes.
lot.
Yeah.
This is a lot of reading."
Yes. Yes.
And but hearing him talk about it, we would talk about it, and he would tell me, these are the stories that I was reading,
Hmm.
and how it affected him,
Yeah.
and it made me want to give those stories another read. And
Yes.
specifically, he brought me Secret Wars the first time,
Hmm.
and man, I loved it. I read the whole thing, and I was like, oh my gosh, man, like,
Hmm.
you know I know I'm reading all these modern books, but man, I need to take a look at some of these
Yes.
things,
Oh yeah.
and appreciate the past, the
Yes.
history. And I think from that, me doing that, and then me telling him, hey, this is, check this out. This is,
Yes. Hmm.
Resistance. This is a book from AWA.
Hmm.
It's like a superhero universe that's just beginning.
Hmm.
And I think it's a little bit like the X-Men, like a modern,
Yeah.
version. um, and so him giving that a chance, and then being like, wow, that was really good,
Yeah.
like,
Hmm.
um, and I love that when people have open minds to, there's comics are just such a, it's just, it really is just such a beautiful, when I talk about comics, I can't say enough good things about them, and
Hmm.
what they've not only done for me just in an entertainment value, but
Yes.
also just, opening up your mind to new ways of thinking,
Hmm.
new
Yes.
character, new appreciation
Hmm.
for. So it's just so much. I could be here probably 4 hours talking about all this stuff with you, man. So you're gonna have to
I
stop me.
know, Chris. I know. Off the cuff question, and I know you cannot answer for David, but like you said, he's a huge X Men fan.
Hmm.
My God, does he own a giant size X Men #1? Does he have a bunch of John Byrne X Men issues? That do you know offhand?
He doesn't have the giant size X-Men, but he does have several John Byrne, Chris Claremont issues. Um, he's got he's got a ton of first appearances in the Uncanny line.
Hmm.
And what I love about David, and what he and I are so similar, it's great to have key issue comics. I don't want to, put the,
Oh yeah.
I love when you're collecting something for the love of reading it, and
Yes.
the
Hmm.
and you all of a sudden, like, hey, this show is going to be a movie, and that issue that you bought, that you were enjoying the story, it's
Hmm.
now a $50 comic, and you're like, oh
Yes.
wow, I paid $3.99 for that book.
Yeah.
That's incredible. um, David is like that, with, he's had a collection since he was a kid, even when he wasn't buying new comics or collecting, that he's valued that collection, since he was a kid. He's never looked up the value of any of his
Hmm.
comics, to
Yeah.
know, hey, this is what this is worth. So one day we're talking, and Secret Wars, right? He said, hey, you got to read Secret Wars. I said, oh yeah, I'd love to. Well, the next
Hmm.
day he brought me the single issues of the whole Secret Wars run,
Holy
and
cow!
I was like, David, I was like, he just brings them in a backpack, single issue.
Yeah.
he doesn't he doesn't realize, and he just takes them out of the bags, puts them on the counter, and he's
Yeah.
like, here you go, you want to read it, man? And I was like, I started flipping through it. I was like, David, do you know how much these comics are worth? And he was like, no. I said, well, just so you know, I said, I'm gonna read it. I'm gonna be very careful reading it. And I
Yeah.
said, I'd actually rather read the trade, because I don't want to like get your books, ruined.
Yeah.
um I was like, but I showed him some of the value, and he's like, oh
Mhm.
wow, that's really,
Yeah.
that's incredible, but still, like, he has no desire
Hmm.
to sell them. And uh one day I actually went to his house, we're looking through comic books. He has a TMNT number one, second print, you
Hmm.
know, which, I can't recall how many printings I went to, but that book is,
Hmm. Yeah.
how much it's worth. It's incredible. It's ridiculous how much that comic's worth, and he just has it sitting, in his long box. And I'm like pulling things out, like, oh my gosh, dude, like, do you know what this is? And
Hmm.
uh, you
He's
know,
got that Thor issue 337 or first book
yeah,
Simon's in. Yeah.
yeah, seriously. I mean, he's got so much stuff in there. He just, like I said, he won't ever sell it.
Yeah.
He really values it, but it's more, he read all those stories
Yes. Yeah. It's
as a kid, as a young person. And like I said, I love that about his, his habits. And yeah, he definitely has some John Byrne, Chris Claremont stuff. And yeah, it's incredible.
now I'm being serious. I'm not poking fun at David. I'm
Hmm.
being clear because David just shows the real comic book fan. Because like he had the original first printing of Secret Wars, single issues. Here, he puts in his backpack. Here, Chris, why don't you just read this? I mean, this is what we did as kids.
Yeah.
Because we never, we stuff it in our back pocket.
Yeah.
Oh, this is Spider-Man's first black the alien costume. Oh, okay, I didn't know that. I used to fold it up.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
have some of those that I bought, that I'm like, man, who did this? They're all
yeah,
they're all, but I got it for
yeah,
cheap because somebody did that.
yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
mhm,
So yeah, I mean, yeah, David, that's who he is, man. Like, he'd read it
mhm,
for the reason of reading it, picking it up. He always tells me he used to pick up comics, and sometimes he wouldn't be reading a whole series. He would just pick them off the spinner rack and be
mhm.
like, he always talks about back then, man, you could pick up a comic and read it, and you'd
Yeah,
get the whole story right there.
yeah.
You wouldn't have to know what was going on in the
Mhm,
previous one or the next one, or
mhm.
um so we have those conversations a lot. But you know he has changed and evolved, but he is
Yeah,
still
yeah.
that kid, that the collected in
Mhm,
the 80s and the 90s.
yeah.
And I
But
and I love that, and I appreciate it.
I'm gonna have to say, um, there is there is there is the good side. Yeah, some of those were self-contained stories, but
Mm,
also too, there are also some two-parters because I remember,
yeah.
um, when they used to sell like those DC comics or Marvel comics like three in a bag for $1. You'd be
Mm,
like, and it's all mixed up. You could have a Superman, you could have um a detective comic, and then you'll get something like, I don't know, some weird off the cuff comic.
yeah.
But I remember, sorry, I'm kind of going off the track because I remember reading actually, yeah, because I remember one of the stories I remember reading was Detective Comics, the first appearance of Clayface. I think it's three. He had to wear an exoskeleton suit because to prevent him from literally melting away, to keep him alive, basically. I remember I bought one of those 3 packs, had the detective issue part 1, and I'm kind of going, I want part 2. What happened to it
Yeah.
took me maybe 3 or 4 years before I finally figured out comic shop. Oh, they had this here. Okay, now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And for all those stories that David tells me, I always remind him, well, like, one of his favorite stories is the Dark Phoenix saga, right?
Yes.
Or Secret War. And I'm like, well, those are stories you could not read, on their
Yeah.
own. There's, you got to
Yes.
read the run,
Yeah.
to get the full story. And he'll, yeah, you're right, about that one. So, I love having these conversations with him, man. We go back and forth. And but yeah, I mean, at the heart of it, you know, he loves he loves his X-Men, loves his classic characters, and
Yes.
I'm
Mhm.
extremely proud of him for, taking a chance on modern books because it's
Hmm.
something he was not doing at all.
Yeah.
And now he has found his niche with things that I don't read.
Hmm. Yeah.
David reads some real out of the off the bonkers stuff,
Uh-huh.
but that's the beauty of comics. You can
Yes.
everybody's got different tastes and different things that they love to read, and he reads all sorts of stuff. We laugh about, and but I'm extremely proud of him and appreciative of how he's evolved
Hmm.
and how our journeys have made each other evolve.
Yes.
So it's incredible.
All right, I'm gonna start skipping around here. Um, because actually, I'm gonna start off with this. How big is your comic book collection?
So currently, and I use the CLZ app.
Okay.
So I
Hmm.
use do you use that, Jason?
No.
So I don't know if you've ever looked into it.
No.
CLZ changed my life. So when you have a big collection and you're constantly adding to that collection,
Yes. Hmm.
I highly recommend any comic fan CLZ Comics. It's an app
Hmm.
you can get on your phone. Um, I I'm happy that I got grandfathered into this app because I paid $15 for the app when I don't know 5 years ago,
Hmm.
and now I believe you have to pay a monthly fee for it. I think it's like
Oh God.
2.99 a month or something like that.
No, still, yeah,
Yeah,
still kind of
so
expensive. Yeah.
it is. Yeah, it's a monthly fee now. You pay for it, but I was, at the beginning of it, I used to keep track on my phone with a almost like a Word doc that I would
Hmm.
keep. I just bought Batman number 467. Let me type that in, and
Hmm.
I totally get that. But this app, and I'm going to tell you how many comics I have. But the
Yeah.
reason I'm saying I get you see my comic haul on Wednesdays,
Yes.
with this app, you just literally scan the book in. Every
Hmm.
book has a barcode. You just boom scan it in. I have 4,416 comics in my collection,
That's nice.
so I can see exactly what I have right here.
Hmm.
Gives me the total, and but yeah, and interesting enough, Jason, I the first year that I was collecting comics, I went really crazy. Bought more comics than I should have,
Hmm.
and out of my budget. I didn't know how to. It really was like a drug. I didn't know how to handle it at the beginning, and I was so excited. I was picking up things and reading things that I had no interest in, but I was just trying to dabble in everything.
Hmm.
And right after the New 52 Rebirth started, and man,
Yes.
Rebirth was so good.
Yes. Hmm.
Man, it was. I love. I even now I look back fondly at the Rebirth era at the beginning,
Hmm.
but as good as it was, there's no reason for me to be reading every DC title. I was
Yes. Hmm.
reading, of course, my staples: Batman, Superman, and then I was reading Green Lantern. I was reading
Hmm.
Cyborg. I
Hmm.
was reading Nightwing. I was
Yes.
reading Blue Beetle. And
Hmm.
I'm like, everything they were releasing, I'm like, I was just buying it, buying it.
Yeah.
Um, I learned a very hard lesson really quick. And when I got out of my budget, I was like, holy crap. And I'm really I need to calm myself down.
No, no,
And,
yeah.
so I ended up selling a lot of what I had acquired in a year.
Hmm.
And my first year, and I kid you not, I had just shy of 2,000 comics in a
Hmm.
year.
Wow.
So
Hmm.
that is what I accumulated in one year. And now I sold them all because I had some financial hardship, or I had to sell
Sorry.
them.
Hmm.
And in that first year of collecting, I had some great key issues that
Hmm.
they've gone up, risen in price now. There's still books in that first collection I had that I still don't own now at this time.
Hmm.
First, Jason Todd, the Batman 635. Had
Oh,
that
okay.
slabbed in a
Hmm.
9.8, and I'll never forget. I got that in it was an online comic auction, and I
Hmm.
I got it for $25. I mean,
Wow.
and I remember at the time. I mean, that was a good deal even at the time. But if
Yes.
you look at what a 9.8 of that book now, you're looking at hundreds of dollars. You know, it's
Yeah.
it's insane. So all to say, sold the collection, and I restarted my collection.
Hmm.
And when I restarted, I told myself from here on out, only things I love,
Yes. Hmm.
only stories that I want to read.
Hmm.
That when I did that refresh, it was before the channel had started. Um, so since that time, that is my collection. I've seen some a lot bigger than mine, some smaller, but
Hmm.
I think for what I do and what I'm reading, that's I don't want to outgrow my little studio here,
Oh
but
no, yeah.
it'll eventually happen, I'm sure.
So, okay, before we get to your studio, I want to ask you, what is your most prized possession? And I'm not looking at monetary, value or first, like something that has sentimental value to you, and it could be either a single issue or a story arc or even a trade in your, yeah. So, what's your most prized possession out of your collection?
All right, so this one is not really anything monetary,
Mhm.
but my daughter was born in, I told you, March of 2020, right at the beginning of COVID, and you know how
Mhm.
that changed all of our lives. Well, my daughter absolutely changed my life,
Mhm.
and the month that she was born, there was the comic came out at that time, Wonder Woman number 750, and we had I
Mhm.
got a blank cover for that comic book, and we got her footprints, and we put on the blank cover. So the month she was born, had that put her footprints right there on the front of that book, and I always have this right on my wall behind me, right
Mhm.
where behind where I sit.
Yes.
Um, but a comic, as she gets bigger, that I look at her feet now, and
Mhm.
she'll be 3 in March of this upcoming year. But it's just something special about that. I mean, it's nothing crazy, just putting her footprints on a Wonder Woman anniversary issue. It's a 96-page comic, blank cover, but it's got her little footprints on there, and that's just that's one that I'll always hold dear to my heart right there. I love that book.
That is so nice.
Yeah,
That is
that's
really,
that's the
that's
one. Yeah,
really nice. That is
yeah.
all right. Now, my next question is going to be a little bit opposite. What is your white whale comic that you are still looking for to add to your collection?
So one that I don't want to be ridiculous, and there are some books that I will never own,
Go for it. Just be ridiculous, man. Just go review. I'm serious if you can,
I mean, Detective Comics 27, I mean
Hmm.
that is, like I said, I don't know how the heck I would ever acquire that, in my lifetime,
Hmm.
but if I if there was one book that somebody said you can have it, you just name it,
Hmm.
Detective Comics 27, first
Yeah.
appearance of Batman. That would be my all time, like man,
Nice.
oh my gosh, man, like
Hmm.
I'm done collecting after that. It just
Yeah.
um, I would give up quite a bit for it, but
Hmm.
um, something I think is more attainable that I think would be possible, with budgeting and
Hmm.
saving, and Hulk 181.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
You know, is it the first appearance of Wolverine? Not, I mean, it's debatable, right? But
Yeah. Yeah. I know it. Yeah.
uh, but it is considered the first appearance to get the iconic cover on it.
Hmm.
That would be the one I think sometime in this lifetime I
Oh,
think I will own
yeah.
that
Hmm.
book.
Yeah.
Um, so that I think the one, the detective, is like a dream. But Hulk 181, that is a book I want to own in my
Hmm.
collection, and I think
Yeah.
I will eventually. How about for you? Do you have what's that book for you?
Actually, for me, actually, I already got it. Was the
Oh wow.
Action Comics number 500. Uh,
Oh.
because that was, oh, I can't remember who the writers were, but Kurt Swan drew. The only reason why was because um it was one of those. dollar size issues where it was like 64 pages or something like it was one of those it was an anniversary issue. And what I loved about it was it told the whole origin of Superman again. And it
Hmm.
was and what it was that basically it was a Superman museum that was opening up, and Superman was giving a guided tour. And what that's the thing I really remembered
That's
about
cool.
it. um Kurt Swan, um and I'm going to say this, for me, Kurt Swan was my Superman that I grew up with. I love John Burns. I Don't get me wrong, I love John Burns Superman. That was great. Everyone else, but for me, because when I started to read comics, Kurt Swan was the Superman artist on.
Hmm.
If I remember correctly, both action. I know I'm definitely on Superman, and I want to see on Action Comics too. So
Hmm.
yeah,
Wow,
so
that's awesome.
I Dragon's Layers was able to get me a 9.6, and I was fine with that. The
Yeah.
CGC 9.6, and I think it was like for $80. So
Oh wow, good
yeah,
deal.
yes,
That's great.
yeah. But so yeah,
Well,
so
congratulations, man. That's awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
thank you. And then I know you're trying to look for the facsimile of Detective Comics 27, because it's right above
Yeah.
you on your right hand side. Yeah. So
Right
yeah,
there. Yeah. That might be the closest I ever have to it, but it's still beautiful looking at the cover. Just it's
yes.
and I I love the history of comics. There was a little period there with the Lost in Comics channel where I was doing a lot of short videos, like
Hmm.
1 minute videos on the history of comics, because my love for the history, when, like I told you earlier, when I go into something I really dive in. And
Yes. Hmm.
I think comics satisfies so many needs and loves and desires for me personally. Even as a kid, I love collecting things,
Hmm.
and I've collected several things, throughout my life. There was a time when I collected stamps,
Hmm.
collected coins, different types of
Yeah.
coins, stamps. I just recently got into collecting vinyl, which I have to be really careful with
Yes.
because I'm limiting myself on that very much. But with my love for music and getting into that's a whole other thing. But with that said, the history and I've
Hmm.
read the Detective Comics number 27 even before I got this. I had read it
Hmm.
online. Um, I'm so curious about where all these things that we love, where they came from, and
Hmm.
the history of them, and how they originated and how they've evolved over the years.
Hmm.
Um, and my second favorite character is the Punisher.
Yes.
Which I do have the ASM 129. Got that right before COVID, right before it
Wow. Hmm.
spiked, crazy.
Yes.
And I still paid a good amount for it. I had a guy that sold it to me and let me make payments on it, which was
Hmm.
excellent. And it's a 5.0, which for me
It's
it's always
still. Hmm.
low grade is better than no grade.
Yeah.
I'm not a 9.8,
Yes. Hmm.
9.8 snobs, but because there's some people they have to have a 9 point.
Hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
like, man, if you give me that comic, give me the lowest grade as long as the cover's attached, man. I put
Yes.
that in
Yeah.
a top loader, and man, there you go, it's in the collection. um but yeah, just I love to go back and read those issues. ASM 129,
Mhm.
first Punisher. I went into the Marvel app, early on. I
Yes.
wanted to
Hmm.
read that origin, that
Hmm.
first appearance of the Punisher, first
Hmm.
appearance of Batman, the first Spider-Man. Amazing Fantasy 15. Going back
Hmm.
and reading those issues, and I love it. I'm actually reading the um, Fantastic Four. I have a collected. Marvel did like a collection, and they're pretty cheap. I think they're $15.
Yes.
You see,
Kind of
like,
like
yeah,
a small, not pocket size, but
yeah, they're smaller. Yeah,
yeah.
they're not full books. They're smaller, and then you can read, the first,
Yeah. Yeah.
first arc, and yeah, like monumental issues,
Hmm.
and I've been reading the Fantastic Four, and man, that some of that's, I mean, obviously some of it's not aged well, but man, some
Yeah.
of it, but some of it, is just it's just fantastic, man. I love reading that, and just I get lost in just the idea of these
Uh-huh.
characters as we know them now.
Yeah.
This is where they started, and
Yeah.
I have a deep love and appreciation for that. So yeah, I just like I said,
Hmm.
another tangent there, but
No, no, it's not a tangent because I'm gonna say because um back in the 70s, Marvel reproduced some of their earlier works from the 60s. Like, the first 4 or 5 issues of Spider-Man in like literally pocket-sized books.
mm,
One of them was Doctor Strange, and it was in color. And I remember falling in love with Doctor Strange. Steve Ditko's art was incredible. I remember reading that thing. Couple years ago at Amazing Comic Con, they had the Steve Ditko Doctor Strange omnibus, the whole collection, and
yeah,
I think I got it real cheap for like $30 or something because usually
yeah,
at these conventions they'll sell it cheap, because they buy them in bulk, right?
right,
I
right,
got it cheap. I'm kind of going. Part of me is kind of going, okay, I do want to read it one day, but that means I have to plop it down on my dinner table, open it, turn the page where it has the I guess like I would say the backpack size Marvel books, the one like your Fantastic Four one. They
yeah,
have a Doctor Strange one. I think it's like the first 9 issues. I want to,
yeah,
and it's at Dragon's Layers. I want to buy it just to
yeah,
so I can like if I'm at a hotel or if I don't want
right,
to break my legs holding having the omnibus sitting on my
yeah,
leg.
yeah. I love the omnibus, man, but they're huge, man.
Yeah.
Like,
And
now
let's
this
be mhm.
might be too much, but if you take that, I don't know if you do any restroom reading, but
Yeah,
those are impossible to take to the restroom.
I
The
know.
omnibus, like, man, they're 5 pounds or
Yeah, I mean, let's put it. Let's be honest, guys.
yeah,
Okay, there's 99.9% of us guys do our reading on the toilet, man. And
exactly.
trying to
Yeah,
and then thank God that Doctor Strange Omnibus is kind of thin, but try to bring in like because I got the 2 volumes of the Injustice Gods Among Us omnibuses. Man, drag for me to drag that into the toilet,
yeah, yeah, that's uncomfortable. Yeah.
And you can't read it in bed too because man, you're gonna get a concussion when it falls on you.
Oh yeah. Yeah. You can't hold it overhead.
Yeah,
You can't really, yeah, it's you gotta lay it in a table in front of you, or I
yeah,
have a nice recliner here where I can you know, kind of put it on the side there on the arm, and
yeah,
but man, you gotta make arrangements for the omnibus.
yeah,
Yeah. I do like those pocket, smaller
yeah.
books. You can just or trades. I've fallen in love with reading books in trade, just
Oh yes.
um it's
Mhm.
fantastic. You can get them for much cheaper, get full runs of comics that you can just,
Yes.
binge. I love it. Yeah,
Sorry, Chris. I'm going to try to wrap things up because I know I don't want to try to keep you too long.
of
So
course.
you talked about. I also want to talk about your little space that you have. So listeners, if you guys you tune into Lost in Comics YouTube channel. Chris has this amazing wall set up. It's incredible. How did you get that? How did you build that up? How did that come about?
So early on, if you watch Lost in Comics from the very beginning, when I was recording those first videos, when Oscar and I were streaming, you will see me in a corner, and you'll
Mhm,
see some it was a really nice little setup, but it was literally a corner of my bedroom.
mhm.
And I shared that is my wife and I, our personal bedroom. And you can imagine, you know, I, I don't, I'm sure most wives do not want to have their,
Yeah.
their
Yes.
husband's growing comic collection and toys, in their bedroom. And not only did I have the collection in the bedroom, but I was also filming, on Thursday nights in the room. And
Mhm.
I have the most incredible wife, you know, giving not she really was not complaining. I just knew that I needed to get out of that
Yes. Yeah. No.
space,
Yes.
and I had a lot of goals, and a vision came about for the channel, and an ever growing comic book collection. I was keeping my short and long boxes underneath our bed,
Mm-hmm.
in my closet,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and just, you know, ever growing. Um, so we our house has a garage, and we were not utilizing the garage for our cars. Our cars are always outside.
Mm-hmm.
We were just had tools and, you know, lawnmowers, your
Mm-hmm.
everyday, you know, things, you know, to take care of the house. And one of the things when we moved into this house that I had always wanted to convert this garage into a man cave or an
Mm-hmm.
entertainment room of some sort. The need just kind of intensified when I became a comic collector and the YouTube channel. So we and I say we because my wife helped me, and we converted this garage into what you know is the Lost in Comic studio with,
Mm-hmm.
you know, all this behind me, the comic wall, and
Mm-hmm.
this wall extends, you know, both ways and up and down.
Mm-hmm.
You know, from here there's another four, you know, from here there's three more rows of comics up on
Mm-hmm.
top. um and I had a an artist come in and do a mural. If you've seen our some of our shows, with the
Yes.
Lost in Comics background,
Yeah.
you know, where it's got, you know, it has the Batman up at the top, Wonder
Mm-hmm.
Woman, Flash. That's right across from me on this side.
Mm-hmm.
And she did a beautiful mural. It says Lost in Comics right in the middle. All the characters around it, my favorite characters. I've planned on doing a room tour, you know, eventually when I
Mm-hmm.
get the time, and I'll do a video of it. But um, yeah, I moved that little corner, and I
Mm-hmm.
all that I had there, the boxes, everything, moved it all out here. It's a garage. It's closed off. I've insulated the garage
Mm-hmm.
door. I've put nice, soft
Mm-hmm.
flooring in here.
Yes.
I mean, it's just it. It really is an escape, and it's highly recommend anybody that's a comic, you know,
Mm-hmm.
comic nerd to have just your own some sort of space. Doesn't have to be a
Yeah.
garage, but you know, I think we all understand that like it's
Yes.
nice to just kind of get your own little space. And the nice thing is we share this, even though it is the comic room, you know. When I'm not recording or whatnot, you know, the family comes in here, my kids play
Mm-hmm.
video games, I have a TV in here, and my wife and I watch shows here in the end of the
Mm-hmm.
night. And but yeah, I love this
Mm-hmm.
room. I'm like it's it's wonderful. I can
Mm-hmm.
call it the Lost in Comic Studios. It's beautiful.
That's nice. And Chris, I'm going to say this, and you know, I'm making this clear. I'm not being sarcastic, but
Sure.
that is so nice of your wife to be, to be supportive of your hobby. Actually, I have a very good wife that's also supportive of my hobby. And,
Yeah.
and the thing, what's good too is that, um, what's nice was that, you respected her space. You go, I need to, you
Yeah.
know, I need to move someplace else in the house to do
Right.
my stuff and have my little area. But yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that I can't overstate it. And I think you you understand what you just said. You know, your wife is similar. You know, I have friends or people that I know that are not in that same boat, and I
Yeah.
know that it can be very detrimental
Yeah,
to
it's
a
yeah,
marriage, to
yeah.
you know, not everybody is has that understanding, you know. And my wife and I I think we're a great team. We do a lot of compromising and a lot of,
Hmm.
you know, when we watch TV shows, you know, it's like, hey, she's watched superhero shows with me,
Yes.
and I've watched, you know, Grey's Anatomy with her, and you know,
Yeah.
like, so it's like, hey, okay, let's watch this series, and then you want to watch this series, okay, I'll watch that series with you. And
Yes.
it's, you know, it's how way we kind of live our life. And you know, comics has been one of those things that I've seen. Like I said, I've seen relationships kind of like, man, you need to give up your collection,
No,
or you need to
it's
stop. You know,
yeah, and it's kind of yeah.
it's hard, you know. And so I think having that respect, and yeah, I knew when I was in that room, she never told me, you know, I need you out of here.
Yeah.
I just knew, I was like, man, this is, you know, I'm taking up a lot of space here. This is not,
Hmm.
you know, I can't imagine many wives want to walk into their room and just see their husband side, you know, Batman on the wall and
Yes.
you know, Daredevil and whatever.
Mhm.
But
All right, so Chris, I'm gonna start trying to wrap this up.
sure.
The next just some, actually, yeah, a couple. Well, let me just ask you about conventions. Do you remember your first convention you went to?
Yes. I went to we have a con that comes here to San Antonio, and it was my first Comic Con. I went, and they always come around my birthday, so I don't
And
expect.
your birthday's coming up on October 13th. Is
How'd you
that
know
correct?
that? Yeah,
I'm,
that is. I don't remember telling you that. Did I tell you that?
no, because you said it in your I saw your top three videos that
Okay,
you mentioned. Yeah.
that's right. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, my birthday is this week, Thursday. So the Comic Con is actually here in San Antonio in 2 weeks. So it's always around my birthday.
Hmm.
A few years back, my wife and my parents surprised me and bought me tickets to meet Jim Lee at our Comic Con here in San Antonio. And it's very rare that we get premiere
Hmm.
you know,
Yes.
creators here at this
Yeah.
Comic Con.
Hmm.
But that year, Jim Lee was coming. As soon as I saw the name, I was like, "Oh man!" I had told my wife, I was like, "Man, I would love to go
Hmm.
see. You know, I would love to meet Jim Lee."
Yeah.
And but they got me the VIP pass. They bought me the VIP so I could meet him,
That's nice.
sit front row at his panel. You know, took pictures with him. Got to sign some of my books. It was incredible experience.
Hmm.
And Jim Lee also being one of my favorite artists. You know, it
Yes.
was my first con and very overwhelming, wonderful experience. uh,
Nice.
and that was my first Comic Con. Yep, Jim Lee. Mm.
That is so nice that your wife and your parents did that.
Oh, it was incredible. Like I said, I'll never forget it. I even saved the pass from that VIP pass,
Yes.
and I have it
Hmm.
hanging up
Yeah.
here on my because it was just one of those monumental,
Hmm.
you know, occasions for me.
One more question um, about conventions, and then I'll start wrapping. Then I've got like two or three more questions to wrap up stuff.
Sure.
Um, what was your now not the Jim Lee experience? What was your other favorite convention moments?
For me, this last year, we David and I went to the Dallas Fan Expo,
Yes.
and
Hmm.
doing man doing this channel. Obviously, I have a good time. You can tell I can gush over comics and um, but you know, it's not something that I'm in to make money or to, you know, get rich. It's just the joy of what we do, you know, just like you're doing right now.
Hmm.
It's incredibly fun for you and you're having a great time. You're supporting something that you like. And um in doing this channel, you know, we've talked about the interviews, you know, it's afforded so many opportunities. And this past year, we were able to qualify to get a press pass for the
Nice.
Dallas Fan Expo.
Hmm.
So, you know, not only did we get to go, but we didn't have to pay to get into the con. You know, our 3 days were paid with a press pass. Um, and for me, I guess again, I'm a very sentimental person, and I take things in. You know, I when I'm doing them, I look back on them, I hold them in high regard, and this is
Hmm.
one of those times for me going as, you know, lost in, not only as myself as just attending a con, but
Hmm.
going as, you know, lost in comics, going with
Yes.
David,
Hmm.
you know, staying in a hotel with him, building our friendship, you
Yes.
know, through that weekend, you know, getting up and having coffee with him in the morning, having tacos, you know, going to the con, just getting to experience that with him, doing it as the channel for me. That was the most, you know, meaningful um, con experience aside from the Jim Lee experience.
Hmm.
For me, this past year, Dallas Fan Expo, that was just incredible, and it's one that I won't forget. Yeah,
Oh, that's nice.
yeah,
And for listeners, Chris and David, you guys now it's on the YouTube channel, but if I remember correctly, you guys did like a half-hour live stream from the con. Is that correct?
Yes, and I wouldn't recommend going back and watching it, but man, the reception in there was horrible. And it was I was having a great time. I couldn't tell that the reception was bad on my feed.
Yeah,
And it actually we actually had quite a few views on that live stream. I think it was like 700 and something views on
that's
that live
nice.
stream. Um, but it
Mhm.
was a horrible recording. But yeah, we did go live, and it's one of the things I told David. I was like, man, I just want to take this all in and just go live, while we're here, set up a
Yeah.
little microphone, and we'll do it again the next time, and we'll prepare a little better, make sure we have a better signal. And
Mhm.
but yeah, we did go live, and it what I love about the con is, it's not just a chance for you to go look at a bunch of great comics, and
Mhm.
go down artist alley and see all the incredible artists and get a
Mhm.
commission, or
Mhm.
get your own original art, whatever.
Yeah.
But you also, it's like, how many opportunities do you get in your normal week to just hang out with that many people that are
Yes.
like you, or that are as passionate about a thing,
Mhm.
whether that be, anime,
Mhm.
comics, art, all these things. You get to be in that environment, and
Yes.
it's just you just feel alive. It's the
Yeah.
best way I can tell you. It's just like you're there, and it's like you feel alive. Like, man, all these people are loving and doing the same thing I am doing. I was standing in line. Um, David and I were standing in line for Tom King,
Mhm.
to get some signatures at the
Yes.
Comic Con, and we're just having conversation with people in line while we're
Yeah.
waiting, and that kind of stuff. I mean, you just don't get that. Like I said, your normal life every single day, you
Mhm.
don't get that experience. So I encourage, when anybody's doing it, don't. It's easy to isolate yourself, and just kind of
Mhm.
walk around. And
Mhm.
but if you just poke a little bit at somebody and ask them a
Mhm.
question, or you overhear them, talking about something, just join the conversation, and man,
Yeah.
you'll walk away with like, man, that was even more
Mhm.
fun than what I had anticipated.
Yeah.
So, but yeah.
All right, Chris, couple more questions and then I'll wrap up.
Okay.
A fun question. Have you and your family been to Hawaii?
We have not, and we talk about it. It's one of
Mm-hmm.
those things that we have both said, man, we would love to go to Hawaii.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's like, man, it's one of those places that's far away, and man, we've never been that far, or
Mm-hmm.
taken a trip that far. But man, I would absolutely love to, and I know I've heard so many great things. I've had cousins that have lived in Hawaii that
Oh. Mm-hmm.
yeah, um, had a cousin that was stationed in Hawaii,
Mm-hmm.
and they love the culture, they love the
Mm-hmm.
people, and I would love to get out there sometime. So,
Okay.
man, need to.
Well, I'll let okay, so this part you do not share with your wife. I'll tell you when comic conventions are coming down, and you'd be going, hey honey, why don't we go at this time? Oh, you guys get here. Oh, there's a convention here? I didn't know there was a comic convention.
How about that? Yeah, that would be great. uh
you know. So,
Man,
um, let's see. Let's see. What is the most fun or exciting thing you love about comics?
man, other than all the things we've talked about tonight,
Mm-hmm.
for me, it always boils down to the stories, right? Like when it's just you and the comics, right? Like if
Uh-huh.
there's always, we did a show one time,
Uh-huh.
the books you would take with you on a desert island,
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
like, there's a ton of fun stuff, the
Mm-hmm.
community, the with YouTube, with conventions. But when it comes down to it, why do you like comics? Why do for me, the most fun
Mm-hmm.
thing, it's always going to be the stories. It's
Yes.
what brought me in, and it'll be the thing that always attracts me. even if I wasn't doing, the channel, and I've had this conversation, I didn't mention it earlier, but Oscar, who was my partner when we started,
Mm-hmm.
he no longer does the channel with me. We did about 100, we roughly about 137 episodes, issues of Lost in Comics, and around issue number 80, 79, 80, Oscar stopped collecting comics.
Mm-hmm.
And he's fine with it. He's great. He and I are still friends, but he
Good.
just he
Yeah.
got out of the hobby.
Yeah.
And like I mentioned earlier, we both were very passionate about it, and he
Mm-hmm.
needed to make a change in his life. He did. At that time, he and I, our journeys were so linked, and so from the beginning of when I first got into comics, and then the beginning of the YouTube channel,
Mm-hmm.
I really questioned whether or not I wanted to move forward with the
Mm-hmm.
channel.
Yeah.
I it was hard not doing it with him. That was it's my buddy and my partner. We started it together.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but ultimately, he pushed me to keep doing it, and I
That's
did,
nice.
and I
Mm-hmm.
kept doing it, and he encouraged me, and said a lot of great things and kind things to me. But all to say, if you took all of that away and the channel and all of that,
Mm-hmm.
you would still find me in this garage,
Mm-hmm.
sitting on my recliner here with a
Yeah.
bunch of trade paperbacks and single issues with, just reading
Yeah.
stories,
Mm-hmm.
and that's how it started before the channel. That's how it would be without the channel. And so for me, the most fun thing for me is just getting lost in those stories,
Yes.
it's what you love, what I love.
Mm-hmm.
It's incredible. And then all the other stuff is just flavor, extra. The
Yes.
community, the cons, the
Mm-hmm.
the relationship. I mean, that those are I love those things, and I love that through the stories, all these other things have grown.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but man, for me, like I said, I hope to be an old man one day with my glasses on, just sitting there, reading comics
Mm-hmm. Yes.
out by a river somewhere, or sitting here in the
Mm-hmm.
but that for me is just, it doesn't get better than that for me, just having
Mm-hmm.
nice coffee, or
Mm-hmm.
a beer or whatever, while I'm reading comic books. So
I have to comment that it's nice that Oscar, even though Oscar, you know, I'm just gonna say for now, stop collecting comics because who
mhm.
knows?
Yeah.
Sometimes 10 because some people stop and they come back, oh my God,
Yes.
this is what I missed. But that's great that Oscar encouraged you to continue on with the channel. And also
Yeah.
too, it's great is that your current co-host, David, you guys have you you know, um you guys balance each other out, whereas David can talk about, this is how, this is the comics that I've read in the past. This is what this is what I liked about them. And
Right.
you're also kind of going, and you're telling David, and this is what's great about comics today too.
Right.
And you guys are balancing each other where David's reading the new stuff today, and you're also looking back. You're also, visiting old stories like you mentioned, the Secret Wars, your original Secret Wars.
Yeah.
That's great. That's really great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know I told you a little bit ago, I'm very sentimental, and when it comes to talking about Oscar, it's and I think back on it, I'll never forget. I told you he encouraged me to keep going. He and I had a conversation. He actually came to my job,
Mm-hmm.
one day, and I was working, and um, this is before I was working at home, and he came to my job, and he said, "Hey, bro, can I talk to you?" And I was like, "Yeah, let's talk." And it's when he told me he was going to sell his collection,
Mm-hmm.
and he wasn't going to do the show anymore. And you know, I kid you not, and I'm not ashamed to say this, but he and I literally cried,
Yes. No.
together,
Yeah.
because we knew what he was telling me. It was almost, and we talk now, we laugh about it, but in that moment, it was like we were this married couple, and I was
Mm-hmm.
like, "You're breaking up with me, man," and you're divorcing me, and and he and I shared that moment, and I'll never forget it. We were just both crying because we had done so much, and I felt like we had
Yes.
accomplished so much together, and
Yes.
what might be very small, and in the big scope of things, but to he and I, and what we had started from nothing, it was a big deal. So,
Yeah.
I always, in the back of my head, I'm always hoping for that day to come when he, like you said, I've seen so many collectors. I've seen some 15 years,
Hmm.
that I've seen on Twitter that I now have conversations with, and they got out of the hobby for one reason or the other in the 90s or early
Yeah.
2000s, and they just came back, and it's like,
Hmm.
wow. So I have that hope for him, and if he wants it, of course,
Yeah.
you know. So
And I think the cool thing is you guys are still friends.
yeah,
Without the
absolutely.
comics, it's you guys are, the friendship still continues.
Exactly. And
Great.
that's, we talked about, that after, we're like, we were friends before, and we'll always be friends, and
Hmm.
we still go out when we can, and
Yeah.
it's but obviously I will always miss him on the channel. So if anybody's ever heard our intro for the show,
Hmm.
that's Oscar singing that. He's doing like a rap,
That's it.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
lost in
No, because
comics, baby. Yeah, yeah, that's Oscar's voice, and I've always kept it in there. I've changed, the back, the images and the
mhm.
video of what's in there, but I've always kept
Yeah.
his audio in the back, so it's almost like a little homage to him.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
All right. Last question. Any closing words to our listeners?
yeah, I mean, I would love everybody listening to come check us out. I
Hmm.
everything that you've heard tonight, it's a true love for the comics, the
Hmm.
history, the stories,
Yes.
and the positivity. I think I try to project that as much as possible. If you're looking for a controversial channel, if you're looking for somebody that likes to argue or has very strong opinions on things, that's not our channel. So
Hmm. Yeah.
but
Yes.
if you share a genuine love, for all comics, and your journey is constantly evolving like mine, where you're reading, past stories and new stories. If you love hearing from the creators that wrote and have
Hmm.
drawn these beautiful books that we get to read every single week, come follow, give us a follow, give us a subscribe to our channel.
Hmm.
Um, I recently started a TikTok. I was
Oh.
resistant to that for a while. So, we have a TikTok also. You can check us out on, and basically everything you see on YouTube, you'll
Hmm.
see on TikTok. I'm not doing anything special. I'm just taking clips out of our
Hmm.
stuff that we do on YouTube, putting it on TikTok, and people like shorter videos.
Hmm.
People, that's our generation now, is just,
Yeah.
wants quick. So I'm putting things on TikTok. So check us out on TikTok. On YouTube is our primary content driver, and I would love for everybody to check us out. And I also want to just say, thank you to you, Jason. I mentioned it at the top of the show, but we've never met, like
Hmm.
this.
Yes. Yeah.
And but I see you every week. I see your posts. You also do a Tuesday post, every
Hmm.
single week, and a Wednesday post. You do
Hmm.
a new DC post, and you
Yes.
do
Hmm.
the new comic day post on Wednesday. And you also have a rare positivity
Hmm.
that,
Thank you.
it's appreciated and it's noted. That you see a lot of people on Twitter, and we have, different varying degrees of how close we are to people on social media, but you
Hmm.
can tell when somebody's consistently a positive force. And I appreciate that about you. And I had no reservations about being on the show with you, because I can tell just from what I see and how the length of time I've seen it on your consistency. And I just want to tell you, I appreciate that from you, and I thank you for having me on your podcast.
Um, um, just Chris, just Chris. Thank you very much. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. You know, we follow each other on Twitter, literally almost from literally. Well, I know you came on Twitter on 2019, but we
Hmm.
pretty much, and I came on Twitter like a couple months after you, but we've been pretty much following each other. And
Yeah.
I love your Twitter posts. I I love, and like I've said already, like I love, whenever I get a chance, even sometimes I'll watch the old ones. I love your, the Lost in Comic shows. It's great. I love, like I said, I love your new comic book day videos that you drop. It's real short. It's great, and it's just again, it's just that positive attitude of your love for comics,
Yeah.
you know. So just Chris, you know, mahalo. Thank you very much for being on the show. Thank you very much for your time. Listeners, I told Chris in the like couple emails, don't worry, we're gonna do 90 minutes. Don't worry, we're gonna do 90 minutes. Like now it's like 2 hours plus,
It was a good time, man. I had a great time, and mahalo to you. Thank you again. This has been a fun night, great night. I'm glad we got to do it.
Yeah, and I'm glad that we were able to finally meet,
Yeah,
over Zoom. Yeah, it's great.
absolutely.
Um, Now, if you are a new comic book reader or a lifelong comic book reader looking for a new comic book podcast, you know, um, then please check out the Lost in Comics. As I mentioned, I love this YouTube podcast. It's full of positive energy, and it's a lot of fun. You know, so if you guys get a chance, please check it out. I want to thank Drew, the host of Comics for Fun and Profit. Drew, thank you very much for all your hard work and behind the scenes in putting these episodes together. And if you are a new listener, please check out new episodes of Comics for Fun and Profit that comes out every Saturday. And I want to thank you, the listeners. Thank you very much for your time. Thank you for listening to this episode. Until next time, guys. Aloha.